We hope to get a lot of knowledge from our parents, but that's not always the case. Let me explain to you how my dad and my mom quite influenced my life and how I try to break the cycle from my parents. So my dad was quite a troubled holy man. I had quite a weird relationship with him. My dad was working way too much. Mostly he was working 60 to 70 hours a week due to the fact that he was a deacon for the Roman Catholic Church. But this also meant that we as kids didn't have an easy time at home. Where he put all of his energy towards his work, he didn't put his energy towards his kids. My dad quite often got really mad and he couldn't control his emotions or his moods and his behavior due to working so much. So my dad got mad, and I don't know why, I was way too young. But as a little kiddo, he threw a cup to me. And the only thing that I sort of really remember was that something inside of me changed. Afterwards, I got to be a more silent kid. Well, I didn't think much of it up until I started to talk last year to my brother. As my dad was quite often mad, so he would even get mad when he couldn't find his keys. When things didn't go to plan, he would easily get mad. But most of all, he was also a slave to the church, where he was putting in so many hours, but also got critique from time to time in decisions that the church made. But since he was sort of the head of the church, he would have to deal with that. If he got shit at work, me and my brother mostly got the end of the stick from that. So for my brother, it was more intense, because since that cup incident, the only thing that I sort of really remember was I always kept my dad a little bit on a distance, because in a way, and that's unconsciously, I didn't trust him. So later on, when I was like 14, 15 years old, when my dad lost his keys, for example, I just started to annoy him as a kid, and I started to make fun of him. And the troublesome thing from that was not necessarily that he would react to me, and even if he did, I didn't care that much. But he was more intense towards my brother because he was older. And this had a greater influence on my brother, I learned last year. So for my mom, as the wife of a deacon, she sort of put her whole life away to take care of us, because my dad didn't have time for that. But also to take care of my dad for the moments that he needed that, since a lot of like the house things, but also deciding things for us to do. And my mom didn't have an easy life from her parents as well. Her dad was an alcoholic, and well, her mom also had to deal with that. So this is a bit to give you a perspective on the situation and how it influenced us as kids. Now I want to go into breaking the cycles, because I think that's really important to recognize. I honestly think that trauma from parents, due to the way that they talk to us, but also due to the way that they teach us or in how their behavior is, you get a lot from your parents, of course. And as I start to unpack everything, I recognize certain behaviors and certain patterns for myself. Gladly, it's also a learning curve. So in the trouble that I had with my past relationships, I noticed at least that I didn't want to have the same. So my dad was married before my mom, and it was quite a lot of struggle because, well, if you are working for church, you have to get an acknowledgement to divorce from your first wife, and hopefully that's then okay to even start working for the church. But that was all right. But my mom told us later that his past wife actually threw my dad off the stairs. And just this whole behavior that he did everything for her while she was not treating him well, I started later on to recognize in my own relationships that I wanted things to be healthy and to not make the same mistakes as my dad did. And the same thing goes for my mom. So since she put her whole life away for her partner, I think that is super unhealthy. But you're two individual people that both need to make the relationship to work. And if that's not there, then it's not worth it for me. Yes, I can love someone, but love is not everything. I'm not gonna destruct myself for my partner. Then lastly, I wanna take you along with my addicted grandpa because, well, as I've been talking on this channel a lot about drugs and etc. Also, there I saw that he was abusing substances, but he also needed it to calm himself down. And yes, he only made it worse for himself in terms of his family situation and how he treated his kids, his wife, but also his grandchildren. He was a good grandpa towards us because we didn't really notice it. But then in other circumstances, we would notice it, and where my grandma would blame us for his behavior. So all of this I take into account in the steps that I take in my life. Because first of all, I don't want to behave the same as either my parents or my grandparents, but I also just don't want to make the same mistakes. And now that I'm 35, I of course can look back on certain things. And yes, I also had a period of my life in where I would put my own goals and life aside for a partner. Gladly, I learned from that, and now I always take that into account. And these kind of things in terms of breaking the cycle is just looking back at the patterns, the behaviors. So my lesson for all of this is just to see how your family influences you in how you react, in how you behave. And it's always up to me to make sure. Gladly, I can still talk about certain things with my mom to ask her, like, why did my dad behave like this and why did he make the choices that he made? Overall, I think we should learn from it and just, take these things into account. The scariest thing for me is to fall into the same traps as my family did and to not be honest with myself and just go the same path. Even when I start to think about having a family, for example, I just want to make sure that these things don't end up in my life. Do you have certain things that you learned from your parents or that you don't want to learn from your parents? Please let me know. I hope you liked the video. Please let me know by throwing a like and subscribe. That would help me out a great deal. And then there is nothing else to say than big hug, much love, and then I see you in the next one. Ciao, ciao.